I know you've heard of the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare, and I know that you know it had little to do with health care, and certainly it was not affordable. Well, there's a new bill on the horizon, much worse than Obamacare, and it's called the Equality Act. Before I get into today's blog, I want to read something to you that I wrote. I want you to know that I've been criticized by the left because I supposedly was spewing vile hate speech in my last vlog, the one called Democrat Campaign Issues. Now this really surprised me because I was only parroting what the candidates who are running said. Instead of attacking what I said and then giving their thoughts on the issues, they attacked me personally, accusing me of spewing hate speech, vile hate speech. Thus, I'm sure their goal was to shut me down. It's sad that we cannot have a dialogue in which the issues are discussed without throwing personal pejoratives and demeaning each other. Now, back to the vlog. On the Equality Act, there's nothing, absolutely nothing in the Equality Act that gives you and me, the average person on the street, equal protection under the law. Instead of calling this bill the Equality Act, it should be named the Cultural Degradation Act. Or, if you're sexually straight with religious values, it should be called the Moral Reduction Act. The given name has nothing to do with equality. It's a euphemism that the politicians are trying to use to placate the left when they really don't care about equality. On Wednesday, March 13th, Nancy Pelosi introduced this so-called Equality Act, and this bill will add sexual orientation and gender identity as a protected class under federal civil rights law. The bill gives nothing in the way of protection to those with personal religious beliefs which differ from those of the protected class. Otherwise, the protected class now has a greater level of civil rights than you or I have as an individual. Now, the original Civil Rights Act of 1964 furthered equality by ensuring that African Americans had equal access to public accommodations and material goods. Now, the Equality Act would further inequality, not equality, but inequality, by penalizing everyday Americans. Penalizing them for their beliefs about marriage, about biological sex. That's a quote from the Heritage Foundation. And I'm adding that this includes African Americans who the original Civil Rights Act was made to protect. Now, the bill goes way beyond equal access. It gives special access where the Civil Rights Act ensured all persons, regardless of race, religion, and biological sex, could not be discriminated against. This bill will blur the lines of appropriate discrimination based on psychological preferences. Now, physical discrimination based on biological sex is appropriate in certain cases where it protects physical and emotional privacy of the parties involved. And we'll get into that in just a minute. I think that African Americans should be particularly offended by this bill because it puts a person's choice of sexual orientation on the same level as a person's race. Now, this bill is similar to the state legislations that we've been seeing, like the Colorado bakery law, where the proprietor cannot choose to not participate in gay weddings. This act is filled with all kinds of potholes of unfairness for what I call our historical culture. And there's going to be all kinds of social, moral, and ethical implications. So let's look at the act a little more closely. In the first place, The act would regulate thought, belief, and speech by requiring uniform assent, that is, uniform agreement to the new beliefs about human identity. These are the beliefs that are contrary to those beliefs held by many, for example, people of faith as well as non-believers. Point: you will be forced to recognize as acceptable, not tolerate, but recognize as acceptable these new sexual norms, or you could lose your business or your job. It's that broad-reaching. So otherwise, if you're a Christian, if you're an Orthodox Jew or a Muslim, you cannot, nor you will not, be allowed to speak your belief concerning homosexuality, transgenderism, etc. It is not a matter of tolerance, I'll say again. It's not a matter of tolerance. The so-called Equality Act demands full acceptance of someone else's differing choices and thoughts. This bill is going to also annul the Religious Freedom Restoration Act of 1993, which means freedom of religious practice will not be allowed. Now, your belief in spiritual doctrines of the Bible or the Quran or whatever will no longer be appropriate or permissible. Now, this is paramount to the Bible burnings we saw in Nazi Germany. Furthermore, the act will force doctors and hospitals to perform treatments and surgeries associated with gender transition, even, now listen, even if the doctor feels it's not in the patient's best interest. Now, reasonable people know the verdict is still out and will be for a long time as to whether gender transition is a viable solution to someone who struggles with sexual identity. The act will make inappropriate, sex-segregated, that's right, I said sex-segregated, restrooms, locker rooms, and other private spaces. We know how well this is working for various department stores where there has already been issues of child predators using the women's restroom and molesting little girls. This is serious business, folks. The bill is also going to force charities and adoption agencies to look the other way when same-sex couples want to adopt, even if it goes against the birth mother's wishes. Got to take time for a drink. It's just Pepsi. Homeless shelters would be required not to, hear me now, homeless shelters would be required not to segregate men and women. The Equality Act is going to cost our country countless charitable organizations, which means there will be fewer institutions available to serve people who are in real need. Charities are going to have to shut down or accept the idea there's no longer a difference of physical sexuality. You could say it like this: men are women and women are men, and neither can tell the difference. Now, this is the insanity that dominates the lack of common sense that prevails in Washington, D.C. The bill doesn't do a thing to protect children's right to privacy in locker rooms, restrooms, and other similar areas. Now, you got to ask yourself, do you want your teenage daughter sharing a shower with a testosterone-driven 16-year-old boy? I find it hard to believe that any parent would find this acceptable. The act is going to normalize hormonal and surgical interventions for children. And you as a parent will have little or no say in the matter. Can you imagine a 9-year-old child having hormonal treatments to change and displace his or her normal growth hormones? In fact, there's a case in Ohio where the parents lost custody of their 17-year-old daughter because they declined to put her on testosterone supplements. Now, what kind of a law is it that demands healthcare professionals to do something like this to a child. I think you can be assured there will be many legal battles like we've never seen before. The results will be the destruction of career paths and livelihoods on a national level as these battles all play out in court. I think we're all aware of the lawsuits surrounding the Colorado bakery and the Indiana pizza joint. Those weren't pretty. I think it's hard to imagine a country where the culture does not respect women as women and men as men. It's hard to imagine a country where sexuality is determined by drugs and not by birthright. It's hard to imagine a situation where women would want to share bathrooms and locker rooms with a horde of naked men. If Congress, if Nancy Pelosi thinks this is so great, why doesn't she make the bathrooms in a House of Representatives gender neutral? Try it out. See how all it works. She can do this today. She has the power. She needs no bill to do this. She needs no legislation to do this. She can make that a decree just like that. I'm sure you won't see it. So you got to ask yourself, do you really think the left really cares about equality for those who prefer sexual multiplicity? I don't. So what is this bill all about? I think it's about destroying our 250-year-old culture on which the country is founded. This will divide us. This will be making it easier to prop up a totalitarian society where every thought and where every practice is ruled by government, where a cadre of Washington elites will make every decision for you. Abe Lincoln once said, "The nation divided against itself cannot stand." This bill is a dividing bill. Rest assured that it is. This bill is going to limit our freedoms of thought, of personal moral and ethical decisions. This bill is the beginnings of the slippery slope to total control of life and liberty of every individual in this once great nation. If you agree with me, if you agree with my thoughts, please give me a thumbs up. Also, you can subscribe by pressing the middle icon at the end of the vlog. And don't forget, ring the little bell and you'll get notifications when I put up a new vlog. Now this is especially important for Cultural Corner followers on Nextdoor, on the Nextdoor website, where due to censorship, my blog is extremely difficult to find.